doing our recording. Hello to the people that are coming in. We're just gonna give it a few minutes for everybody to join before we get started with the webinar today. While we're sitting here, I'll walk you guys through Zoom a little bit. If you move your cursor around over the screen, there's little buttons that pop up at the bottom. One of them is a little Q&A, and the other one says chat. You can basically, if you have questions during the webinar, feel free to write them into the chat window or the Q&A. The chat window, you can also make other comments if you have something pertinent you'd like to share. And we'll pretty much give, wait till the end to do most of the questions, but I will let you know, like, if it's something that's very pertinent to what is on screen at the moment, then I will politely interrupt and ask our panelists to give us an answer. And with that, well, I guess I'll wait a couple more minutes before I do the intro, because we're up to, yeah, I'm just waiting to see when we get most of the participants in.
For sure.
All right. Just realized I'm recording dead air now. That's okay. I'm going to edit this out after the fact. Okay, the panel, or sorry, the participants coming in is slowed to a trickle, so I think we'll get going. Most people are on time. That's nice. So welcome to the first webinar in the series. The Canadian Association of Postdoctoral Scholars is running for Postdoc Appreciation Week. Today we are joined by somebody from Adoc Talent Management. This is Marianne. Marianne, you might have to correct how I pronounce your last name. Is it Chevrier?
It's Chevrier.
Chevrier. There we go. My apologies. My French is abysmal. So basically, Marianne's kind enough to join us today, and she's actually coming back on Friday to do a repeat of this webinar for us. So we would like to thank her kindly for her time. We really appreciate her coming and having a chat with postdocs to help them kind of have a better idea of how to prepare for their career after their postdoctoral training. Marianne holds a PhD in educational psych from McGill University. Her doctoral research was focused on the cognitive, metacognitive, and affective mechanisms that facilitate the attainment of the highest levels of learning, as well as development of competencies at post-secondary levels. So, as you can tell, Marianne is an expert in this area. She also holds a degree in business management and has more than 10 years of experience as a manager and team leader. And she joined Adoc Talent Management as a researcher and recruitment consultant in 2019. And as I said, she joins us today to talk to our members about preparing for the rest of your career after your postdoc. So take it away, Marianne.
Thank you, Joe. Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining. So this webinar today is entitled Preparing for the Rest of Your Career After a Postdoc. Technical, okay, moving right along. Okay, so in this workshop, we will be addressing the question of preparing for your career after a postdoc through the lens of your skills. So the aims of the webinar are to define what skills are and to learn how to identify and promote your skills. And then we'll conclude with a question period at the end for those that have them. So why focus on skills? Well, first, for any job, skills are what you have to offer. It's what you're bringing to the context, and skills are what employers need and look for. So it's really what is at the center of your employability. Second, our research shows that PhDs are often unaware of their own skills or have a hard time expressing their skills outside of academia, for instance, in a hiring context. And on the other hand, we also find that employers or recruiters, like headhunters, are often unaware of what PhDs have to offer beyond scholarly expertise. So we believe that the most effective way of preparing you for the rest of your career after a postdoc is to gain awareness of the skills that you've developed through your research experience, and to learn how to communicate on the basis of those skills throughout the hiring process from the networking phase to writing your CV to handling an interview. So before we get started, let me introduce Adoc Talent Management and then a bit more about me, although Joe has done a very good work of introducing me already. At Adoc, as you've heard me say, we conduct research on the skills that are developed through doctoral and postdoctoral training, as well as on the career paths of PhDs in the Canadian market. So we look at where they end up, how satisfied PhDs are with their positions, and whether or not they use their research skills on a daily basis. So this research activity and the results of our research help support the two other facets of our activities, which are the recruitment and the training aspects. So we are first and foremost a recruitment agency, meaning that we work with companies that operate in every sphere of the economy, whether they be startups or big research institutes, hospitals, large financial institutions that are looking to hire PhDs or highly specialized individuals. So every day we work with employers, and that puts us in a privileged position to understand what our employers' needs and how they perceive PhDs. And lastly, we have a training facet to our activity through which we deliver workshops and seminars or webinars like this one, and through which we help grad students and postdocs and PhDs to prepare for the rest of their career by introducing them to different concepts and tools. So just a quick word about me. So I'm Marianne. As Joe said, I have a PhD in educational psychology, but I also have a background in business management. So I was a manager for about 10 years before I started grad school. And then during my studies in educational psychology, I've studied how individuals learn across the lifespan and through different contexts. And I've also studied how to assess the outcomes of learning. So combining my skills for business management with my research skills and my communication skills and my knowledge of the process of skill development and skill evaluation, I joined Adoc Talent Management about a year ago to act as a researcher, a recruiter, and a trainer. So now that you know what we're all about, let's go ahead and get started. So the framework that I operate from is the following. So your realistic career options are situated at the intersection of your aspirations in the pink circle, your skills in the green circle, and the opportunities of the job market in the blue circle. So in other words, preparing for the rest of your career after a postdoc means knowing your drives, motivations, your values, your aspiration in the pink, but also being able to identify and communicate on the skills that you have developed through your extensive research experience, so the green circle. And lastly, gaining knowledge on the market in which you are situated or where you'd like to be situated. So today in this workshop, we'll mainly focus on the skills aspect, but it's important that you also do the work of identifying who you are as a professional worker and what you want out of a career. But that you also educate yourself on the labor market wherever you are. So let's take a quick look at what the job market looks like for PhDs in Canada. So broadly speaking, there's about 40% of PhDs that will stay in the post-secondary education sector, with about 20% landing a tenure-track position in academia. And then another 20% doing part-time or short-term work as university professors, Cross lecturers, or doing postdoctoral training. So that leaves about 60% of PhDs that work outside of academia, mostly in the natural and applied sciences, the health and education sector, or also holding positions as managers. So when we talk about preparing for the rest of your career after a postdoc, I want to tackle one major issue, which is the bad habit that PhDs have when they're involved in a job search or hiring process, which is to talk about their research as opposed to talking about themselves. So again, talking about yourself means talking about your skills most of the time. And that's the best way to position yourself as someone who can solve an employer's problems or contribute to a group or organization in a meaningful way. So what are skills? You may be familiar with PhD comics. So here's just a little one where Mike is meeting with a career service counselor who says, welcome back, Mike, have a seat. Let's start by focusing on your transferable skills, you know, those skills that you've learned that might be useful in a real job. So for example, writing research papers. Do you know what that says to an employer? Mike says, that I know how to type. And the counselor says, exactly. How many words per minute? So hopefully your experience writing research papers, among other things, says a bit more about your skills and competencies than your ability to type quickly. But what exactly does it say? So we define skills as resources that individuals can harness and combine to adequately address professional situations, that is, to act competently. So oftentimes, we found that PhD holders or postdocs have skills that they are unaware of, that they don't know how to articulate or express in non-academic contexts, or that they think are very common or unimportant or uninteresting to employers. So we kind of have a tendency to undervalue our own skill set. However, the PhD and scholarly research, through all the different activities that it has, helps you to develop and hone a wealth of skills. So let's work on identifying those skills. So one activity that you have most likely completed is a literature review. So that consists of searching for relevant sources of information, reading them, analyzing them, synthesizing them. So that is an activity that develops obviously expert knowledge and also written communication skills, as well as analytical skills, the ability to synthesize information, but it also sharpens critical thinking. It develops the ability to formulate a problem or develop a research question or possibly also develop frameworks. And in terms of attitudes and behaviors, conducting a literature review is an activity that helps to develop autonomy, rigor and method, time management also, as well as curiosity, perseverance. So for instance, if you were applying for a job that requires good time management or rigor or method, or the ability to develop research questions, don't forget that you can draw on your experience conducting literature review. Other activities that we do as PhDs or postdocs is planning research. So for instance, in the context of grant writing purposes. So this is an activity that takes you right into the heart of what project management is. It's an activity that draws on time management skills, budget management skills, personnel management skill. It might require hiring and training or mentoring volunteers or more junior researchers. It might also draw on leadership skills, so the ability to motivate others and keep them on track. We can also talk about just data collection. That is an activity that draws on sometimes your technical skills if you're working in a science lab, for instance, or if you do more qualitative work, and if you do like ethnographic work, or if you conduct focus group to collect data, then that is an activity that requires communication skills, social skills, maybe clinical judgment. And data collection in of itself is also, you know, could be framed as project management, because it definitely requires time management, sometimes budget management, personnel management, leadership skills, not to forget networking, because sometimes only to form partnerships where, to be able to access that data, that will require communication skills, networking, partnership development, as I said. One last example, it could be the dissemination of your research. So here we're talking disseminating your research to a variety of audiences, such as writing and publishing research papers, obviously, but also talking at conferences, taking part in panels, maybe with other stakeholders, teaching, consultancy, maybe for you that's also like blog writing, So obviously any of these activities is something that draws from oral and written communication skills, as well as your ability to adapt your level of language to different audiences. And in terms of soft skills, it's an activity that requires autonomy, creativity, pedagogy, and often self-confidence. You know what I mean? So altogether, through our research, we've identified 31 core competencies that are developed through academic research. Core competencies means that these competencies have an equal probability of being developed through academic research, irrespective of an individual's discipline, institution, year of graduation, mode of funding, etc. So we believe that these 31 competencies characterize the specificity of the PhD holder. So we can group these 31 competencies under 6 categories. And I'll start with the purple patches at the bottom right, which represent scientific expertise. That's the obvious one. PhDs possess disciplinary or multidisciplinary expertise. In the pink patches above, we have transversal competencies, which include innovation capacities, the ability to synthesize, to think critically, to formulate problems, solve problems, work in a team, but also to self-assess. We didn't mention this one. Moving on to the red patches on the left, we have transferable technical competencies, such as oral and written communication, project management, teaching, analytical skills. Then the blue and purple patches at the bottom list some social behaviors and qualities, such as perseverance, relational capacities, but also open-mindedness, creativity, autonomy, etc. And lastly, on the top left corners in the blue, dark blue circles, we have 2 meta competencies, which are skills that allow one to acquire new skills. So these include learning abilities and adaptability. So together, these 2 meta competencies make PhDs lifelong learners. So now that we've identified the skills that PhD holders possess, let's see whether these skills are on demand and of interest to employers. So evidence shows that among the skills and competencies that recruiting professionals value the most, that PhD holders have developed and can use are the following: problem solving, adaptability, time management, organization, oral communication, collaboration, and written communication. So that's good news. You are equipped to provide value and to look valuable in the eye of most employers. You just need to know how to communicate that value. So we're currently conducting research at Adoc to see what Canadian employers say when we ask them about what they're specifically looking for when they're looking to hire highly skilled, highly qualified individuals. And we are looking to see if those needs are in alignment with what PhDs and postdocs develop. And you can contribute to this research. So our research project is called PhD Detectives. We launched it about a year ago in collaboration with our partners, MyTax, CAPS, and Finance Montreal. So in the context of that research, as I said, we're collecting data from both PhDs and employers with the goal of assessing the extent to which there's a match between what PhDs have to offer and what employers are looking for. And if you'd like to participate, go on our website, phdetectives.ca, and click on the bottom left link in green. It says take our survey. So now, with the time that we've left, I want to talk about how you can promote your skills in a way that's relatable to employers outside of academia. And one of the most effective ways of communicating about your research and about yourself and your skills in terms that employers will relate to is by formulating STAR statements. So I don't know if you may have heard of STAR statements before. The STAR method is a way of turning any experience you've had into a narrative or a story that makes a connection between your experience, your skills, and an employer's needs. So they say that people remember stories, not facts, and that's why using STAR statements is so effective. So for any experience that you've had, you can craft a STAR statement, whether that is that be for research-related experience or work-related experience, even voluntary work experience. Any experience you've had has contributed to developing your skills and turning you into the individual that you are today. So you can likely craft a STAR statement about it. So the way you craft a STAR statement starts by identifying a situation. So the who, what, where, when of a situation. So it might look like completing the following sentence. I was working for this company, or I was working with this research group back in 2005. Next, you want to identify a task that you were given or had to tackle. And you want to be able to talk about that task in terms of what were the goals for that task and what were the success for the criteria the criteria for success. For instance, you had to increase sales by 15%, or you had to recruit 5 individuals, or you had to find funding for a research project for 3 years. Even if you were working within a group, you want to be clear about your own role in the group. So it might look like completing the following sentence. I had to figure out how to. What was the problem that you tackled? Next, you want to talk about the actions you took. So what did you do? How did you do it? What skills did you use? You want to talk about self-initiated actions. Again, we're talking about actions that you took specifically and not the whole team. And it might look like completing the sentence. To achieve this, I decided to, and you want to talk about concrete actions. And lastly, you want to think about the results or the impact that these actions, your actions had. And as much as possible, you want to think about the result or the impact in very quantitative terms. So think about numbers, percentages, dollars earned or saved. So what happened as a result? I even heard of someone talk about their dissertation as yielding into a 200-page document that included 10 recommendations, and that she presented these 10 recommendations to a room of 150 stakeholders. So just putting these numbers on your dissertation work makes it sound that much more impactful. You're actually talking about impact. So let's move to a concrete example now. I'm going to be using some of my own experience as a doctoral student, and I'm going to be talking about that time that I got a scholarship. So this might be something you relate to because a lot of students go through the process of applying for funding and eventually getting a scholarship. It may seem like a very banal experience, but you can actually star a good-looking, you can craft a good-looking STAR statement out of something like this. So here was the situation. In 2014, I started a PhD in educational psychology, and I integrated in an international research group. My task was to figure out how to get funding for my doctoral project. In terms of actions, to achieve this, I connected with our partner labs in Germany, British Columbia, and California, and I got other PhD students on board and their supervisors on board with my project. I organized weekly team meetings, and then we wrote a research proposal. Each lab kind of pitched in with what expertise they had with methodologies they could bring to the project. And as a result, under my lead, we put together a solid research proposal, and I crafted part of this that I submitted to SSHRC, and I was successful at obtaining $105,000 of funding over 3 years for my project. So this is just the beginning. This is just the groundwork that you have to do to think about the situation. Now is time to craft your STAR statement. And it would look, in this case, something like this: 1 or 2 sentences. So during the first year of my PhD at McGill University, I was responsible for securing funding for my doctoral project. To achieve this, I planned and led weekly meetings with other PhD students in partner labs and convinced them and their supervisors to join my project. As a result, we put together a solid research proposal that I submitted and successfully secured $105,000 of funding over 3 years. However, before you put a sentence like this in your resume or cover letter, you can actually take this one step further and make that STAR statement not just about you, but a statement that really threads together you and your skills and a potential employer's needs. And that really makes you a star candidate that stands out. And I'm going to show you how to do that. And to do so, I've extracted a job posting, so something that's currently open for a position with the Conference Board of Canada for the position of a research associate. So this is a job posting that was online just a few days ago. And among the listed tasks were the following 3 bullet points. So they're looking for someone who can work with the team to prepare research proposals, who can communicate effectively with team members, colleagues, research advisors, external stakeholders, and customers, and actively contribute and participate in a dynamic and highly productive team environment. So the first thing you want to do with a job posting is print it, get your highlighters, and highlight action verbs or phrases and key terms. So in this case, in yellow, I've highlighted prepare research proposals, communicate effectively, and actively contribute and participate. And then in blue, I highlighted some of their key terms. So we have team members, dynamic and highly productive team. So obviously the word team is important to them. So now using these action verbs and phrases and key terms, you can insert them into your STAR statement. And here's what it would look like for me. So during the first year of my PhD, I joined a dynamic and highly productive international research team. And I was responsible for securing funding for a research project. Over the course of 2 months, through weekly meetings that I planned and led, I worked with team members and research advisors to prepare a research proposal. As a result of my effective communication, we submitted a solid research proposal, and I was successful at securing $105 of funding for the project. So hopefully you see how a generic statement can be adapted to different jobs, never changing the story though, but emphasizing different aspects of it maybe, and most importantly, using words that resonate with employers and that also highlights your skills. So don't hesitate to look at how they communicate in that job posting and see what kind of language they're using, but also go on their website, look at their mission statements. You can also follow them on social media and see how they communicate on LinkedIn, what kind of things they share, how they communicate on Facebook, how their employers are tweeting online. And so you can really get a sense of what their worldview is and how they like to communicate about that. What terms do they use? So you'll get a sense of their buzzwords and the kind of verbs that they like to use, and don't hesitate to include those as much as you can in your STAR statements. Now, a few words about how you can use STAR statements and how you can go about preparing them. So first of all, your STAR statements can be collected and prepared in advance of completing an application. So you want to start by identifying your areas of experience. Think about, as I was saying, your previous jobs, your previous research experience, any area of interest, voluntary work you've done, maybe travels, and start creating your STAR statement. So these statements can also be used to prepare for behavioral interviews. So you can think about tasks that you've completed and had an impact, but you can also think about times where you have you've been involved in conflict negotiation, times where you've overcome some of your weaknesses, times where you've demonstrated leadership. You can think of any kind of these experience and craft a STAR statement out of it. So you may end up having a very long list of STAR statements that define your entire life. And then when you apply to a new job, fetch for those that are directly relevant to the job that you are applying for, and rework these STAR statements by including some of this company's words, some of their language, their action verbs, their buzzwords, and then you will use these much fewer STAR statements to build your material. So that's your resume, your cover letter, and how you communicate during the interview. And I just want to use the last bit of time that we have here to talk about how you can use star statements in your resume. So let's talk about the resume just a little bit. First of all, your resume should have 2 pages. I'll say no more, no less. In Canada, 2 pages is typical. And you want your resume to include the following sections. You want a summary of qualifications that includes 2 to 4 bullet points that are like one-liners of your top relevant skills. Typically, employers or recruiters will only take 30 seconds to skim your resume. So that summary of qualifications section at the top is essential because they may only read that. And if you only had 2 to 3 to 4 key things to communicate with them, that's where you want to put them. That's where you want to put the top 3 or 4 skills or experience that you have that directly addresses their problem. Then you want to list your work experience, including your doctoral and postdoctoral work. So again, here you want to have 2 to 6 relevant work experiences. Then you'll have a section that talks about your extracurricular achievements. Again, 2 to 6 relevant experiences is enough. And after that, you'll want to have education and selected awards. By the time you completed postdoc, you may have had a long list of awards and prizes and accolades. You'll want to select only those that are the most impactful, maybe, or the most relevant. So you'll want to have your top 3 most relevant diplomas and their selected awards. And a selected list of publications can be acceptable maybe at the top of a 3rd page, but only if it's relevant. And by that I mean that the job you're applying for involves you writing and publishing academic papers. Otherwise, do not flood the important skills that you want to communicate on in a sea of lists of awards and education and publications that are just wasting real estate on the page. And the reason I'm talking about the different sections of your resume is because I want to highlight that there are 3 sections where you can plug your star statements, which are the summary of qualifications, your work experience, and your extracurricular achievements. So when you list the job title or the responsibilities you've had, maybe as a researcher or as a writer or as a trainer, underneath that title, that's where you can plug 1 or 2 or 3 star statements that talk about not the extensive list of tasks that you completed under that job title, but 1 or 2 or 3 very relevant experiences that concretely speak to your skills and how you could use these skills in that job context so that employers feel compelled to what's on your resume. So now it's your turn to practice, and I wish you the best of luck with this. And one last word, if you happen to be located in Montreal, or if you happen to be passing by Montreal next week, we will be hosting an open house at Adoc in our office in Montreal. So we'll be serving breakfast, and we'll be hosting more free workshops such as this one to help increase your employability. So come meet us. It's also an opportunity to network. So we're looking forward to meeting you there. And now moving on to questions. So thanks, everyone.
Okay, thank you very much, Marianne. That was very insightful and super helpful. I think we've got a few questions to start. So let me get you started on the first one. We have one that was, I believe you just covered this one actually. So I'll ask it just in case you feel like you can add anything additional. But the question was, where should the star statement be placed in the resume or cover letter? And I think you made it real clear where to put it in the resume. In the cover letter, is there anything you would add about that? Or is it just hit it as much as you can, basically?
Well, your cover letter should not be a duplicate of your CV, so of your resume. So your resume, you'll want to focus on the very most relevant experiences and put those star statements there. Ideally, your cover letter should start by not you and not talking about yourself, but talking about the employer that you're applying for. So you would like to, you ideally would like to open your cover letter by saying, you, company, organization, are looking for someone to do this or solve this problem. Include there your understanding of their needs. They will appreciate that. Then follow maybe by a star statement where you talk about yourself, but not only yourself, you with them. I'm someone who has worked in this context where I've undertook these kinds of tasks and used these kinds of action to get that kind of result. So they now are, they realize that you acknowledge who they are and what kind of problems they have, and you're also able to project yourself working with them, solving their problem. So you want to build your cover letter in that way. 90% of what you're saying should be about you and them together as much as possible. And that means talking about yourself, using their words, and using your skills to solve their problem. So I hope this helps.
Yeah, I think that's very informative. Another question related to the STAR method, so we'll stick on this track for now. We have some other questions that have come in as well, but we'll go with this one. Should I use the STAR method to prepare my LinkedIn profile?
That's not a bad idea, but what really makes a STAR statement is when you start to include the language of the employer. So you may have, I sometimes want to think about your LinkedIn profile as your full CV. Your LinkedIn can have a lot more information because it's the most generic version of your CV, whereas when you apply for a job, you want to send a 2-page resume that is crafted, that is brought, it's condensed, it's brought down to a version that's very specific to an employer. That is, you know, the number one tip that I have for you is always make sure that you adapt all of your material for every job that you apply for. Your LinkedIn can be a lot more generic. So for everything that you've accomplished, if you want to plug a STAR statement there, go ahead. That's not a bad idea, but that will probably look like a very extensive, very long LinkedIn profile. I don't think it's necessary to do that. I think on LinkedIn, it's more important to list kind of all of your experience, list all your skills, and have a very interesting introductory statement about you, about your interests, and that's where you can put some of the information that we didn't have a chance to address too much in this webinar, which talks about your aspiration, your values, what kind of career you want. That's an opportunity to communicate on your career plan. So let it be known what you're after, what you're all about. I would put that there more than accomplishments or skills, and then link to your experience. But LinkedIn is a great visit card. It's important to curate your LinkedIn. Don't be negligent there. It's the number one tool that recruiters and headhunters use nowadays.
Awesome. So another question. Somebody asked, is the 2-page resume limit different for academic jobs asking for a CV? And I think I would answer that very succinctly by saying definitely. If you're, and Marianne, maybe you can add something to that, but your CV isn't a resume. It is, but it's an academic resume, let's put it that way. And it tends to be very long compared to a typical resume.
Certainly, and I would even say that the CV is for you. It's for you to track everything that you've done with years and the actual title and names of the conferences, the organization, everything. You want it all organized there. But even if you're applying for academic positions, you'll want to curate that CV. You'll want to remove some volunteer experience maybe, or every job that you apply for should be, your material should be curated for that application, whether that's an academic or a non-academic job. Mm-hmm. So obviously, the academic CV is much longer than a resume, but again, an academic CV is one thing, and a CV is something else. It's for you, it's for your records.
Yeah, I would agree 100% with that. I think sometimes people make the mistake of treating those like the same thing. And the other thing I would add to this is, in my experience, having come from that realm, obviously, don't be afraid to actually summarize your stuff in your CV. I've actually got, I did this in my CV years ago. It helped me land my postdoc, my first postdoc position when I came out of my PhD. And literally, I just put a table in that showed all the different, how many presentations I had done at different types of conferences and all this. And I did the same thing for my publications, showing how many first author, how many of each type I had. And I got nothing but compliments on it, because people hate having to go through your CV and count things for themselves. So I wouldn't be afraid when you're actually putting together your CV for job applications to actually help people understand the meat of it, the important parts in that way. We're going to move on to the next question because we've got a few left. Someone asked, how about the skills and experiences you achieved before your PhD?
Mm-hmm.
And I'm assuming that you should treat them the same way, basically, but yeah. Would you, and again, to me, it would just be a matter of, if you think the skill is super pertinent to the position, then you might add that in instead of including something about your PhD skills, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah, so it really depends on the position, as you said earlier.
Exactly. You really understood my message, Joe. Definitely, I said this before, any experience that you've had, whether it was academic or work-related or voluntary, or I said travel-related, anything you did in your life, maybe you're a musician or a graphic artist, anything that you did contributes to who you are today. And if that's relevant, and if you can demonstrate, for instance, using a STAR statement, by talking about the task you had, the actions you took, the impact you had, then it is relevant. If you're able to talk about impact, you got something tangible that is convincing and compelling. So don't hesitate to pull from all of the spheres of your life, and don't hesitate to de-emphasize some aspect of your academic work if it's not relevant. The thesis is obviously the big chunk, the big piece of your PhD. That's what people typically think of when they think, oh, you've completed a PhD or a postdoc. It's that research, that thesis. But for many individuals, the thesis was very secondary to their doctoral experience. Maybe they got involved in a startup, or they were very involved in their student bodies and accomplished great things and developed great networks and skills there. And that's the part you want to emphasize. Go ahead. If you want to de-emphasize your thesis, go ahead. If it wasn't the most relevant aspect of it for you, for that job, yeah, you don't need to put all of your eggs in the basket of your academic experience.
We had a question quite a bit earlier, actually. Is there any professional support to review application documents for academia or industry positions? And I'm assuming this person's asking whether Adoc or Adoc offers that kind of support for people.
Well, if you're asking about if we ourselves do it, I can tell you that it's not in the facets of like things that we do. It's not something that we charge for. We're not a career service counseling agency. However, we're always happy to get in touch with people. If you're in Montreal, we're happy to have you over coffee and look at your material, talk about your situation, give you advice and tips and tools and strategies over coffee. And if you're not in Montreal, drop us an email and include your materials and the specific job you're applying for, and we'll be happy to give you feedback and advice. But it's not like we're not a career counseling agency, and we don't charge you for it. It's not an expensive service, but we're happy to help you. And if you're asking whether I know of any professional companies that do such work, honestly, I don't know. What I do know is that every university to which you are affiliated, or that you're alumni to, would typically have kind of a career and planning services office, and they typically welcome alumni, so don't hesitate to tap into those resources.
Yeah, I will add, I know most institutions that don't provide those kinds of supports for postdocs. We don't often have access to career counseling at the institution, but you're right that if you have a PhD from somewhere, right, so the alumni services typically will do that. If you are really keen on this, there are actually a bunch of other companies and people in that sphere. One of the ones that CAPS tends to promote is a company called Beyond the Professoriate. And if you go on our website, I think you can find links, but I can also send out an email later to give you some more information about that. Because there are services out there, it's just a matter that you typically have to pay for it, basically. And we've got somebody added into the chat window the link for somebody who actually another website that does work like that, so you can take a look there if you're interested, people. I just wanted to check with you, Marianne, for if people want to email you to contact you later. It was www.contact@adoc-tm.ca. Is that right?
Without the W's.
Oh, no W's, just contact.
Yeah.
Okay.
The email address, if you want to drop us a line, it's contact@adoc-tm.ca.
There, I just shared it in the chat window too.
It,
oh, there it is.
Okay. So that would be the same email that you want to email us if you want to come to our open house next week. Contact@adoc-tm. -tm. That should be .ca. Sorry.
That's okay.
Mistake there. .ca. Or maybe it's .com. Maybe that's correct. Maybe that's correct. I'm sorry. I think it's .com because we do operate in France and in Canada. So for our Canadian website, everything is in our Canadian team, everything is .ca, but that address is for the entire company, so it is a .com. Sorry for the confusion.
No worries. So we had, there was one. Oh, I know what I wanted to ask you a question, actually. I know previously Adoc was happy for people to actually send their resumes to them, and they would keep them. They had like a database where they kept it on file. And just in case somebody comes to you, a headhunter needs help finding somebody, right, or a company, I guess you guys are kind of the headhunters, actually. So is that something that you still do, or is that something?
Absolutely.
Yeah. Right.
If you are looking for employment in Canada or would be eventually looking for employment in Canada, do send us your LinkedIn profile together with your CV, and we can keep you in our database. Definitely. We are located in France, in Belgium, and in Canada, and we cover those 3 countries extensively. So if you're ever looking for even work abroad, we might be able to hook you up. So yeah, do send us your profile, and we'll be happy to keep you in our database. And you can also check our website, adoc-tm.ca, to look for job postings that might be of interest to you.
Great. We had a couple other questions have come in. One from a little earlier that I hadn't gotten around to yet. Actually 2. With no industry experience, are PhDs considered overqualified for certain positions or underqualified as they lack industry experience? This person says they always kind of feel like they're bound to academia by their PhD. And I think your goal, part of your company's goal, is to, get people out of that mind frame. So, and give them the skills to break out of that sort of mold.
Yeah, every day we try to work with employers to demystify what PhD holders are all about. Some view PhDs as overqualified, some view them as underqualified, some view them as lacking relevant experiences. And so we do the work of trying to talk to the people that we work with to make sure that they gain a better understanding of what it means to have a PhD and to have postdoctoral training. It means that you have, 5 to 7 to 9 years of professional work experience. We definitely consider that the years that you spend doing a PhD and postdoc is professional work experience. PhDs and postdocs, when they're training, they partake in a slew of activities that are paid professional work. So whether you're teaching or you're doing research or you're doing contract research work or you're building your own startup, these are all professional work experiences. And you do things like manage projects, manage people, apply for grants, you know, manage data collection, all these things that I was talking about. These are concrete experience, these are professional work experience, and they should be considered as such. It's a shame that not everybody considers them as such. And so honestly, there are companies that will tend to not recognize your experience as a PhD and as a postdoc as relevant work experience, but it's your job to make sure that they do consider you as an experienced professional worker with years of extensive professional work experience. Now, it may not be in their industry, or it may not be like directly relevant, but if you are able to sell your previous work experience as being relevant, for instance, using the STAR method, you may be able to make a case that you come in with extensive experience and that you will quickly catch up to whatever knowledge gap you may have. You know, it's true, you can admit to the fact that, okay, maybe I come in with a PhD in chemistry and I do not have extensive knowledge of the financial world if you get a job in a financial institution, but you're being hired for your skills and your ability to model data, and that's what they're hiring you for, and you have that relevant experience. So make sure that you get your work experience recognized as such.
So we've got one that's the next question I'll ask. It's a bit off the topic, I would say, of what we're discussing here, but I'm sure that you have some comments to say about it. It basically just asks whether you have any advice for searching or identifying positions of interest. They're not always obvious to postdocs, especially, I think, and we may not know they exist. I think this has a lot to do with what somebody decides their career goals are. Would you agree with that?
Yes, definitely. I think that in order to identify what jobs are open to you, I want to take you back to my original framework there. So let me just go up a few slides. Okay, to the very beginning where I presented the framework. So your realistic career options are at the intersection of your aspirations, your skills, and some knowledge of the job market. So you have a little bit of work to do to identify what is realistic to you. And really what I recommend is doing that work of identifying who you are as a worker, what kind of career you want to have, what do you value, what do you want out of a career, what are your skills, and what does the market look like for you, and define 2 or 3 avenues or career paths that you would be happy to go down. No more. Often people just want to move out of academia maybe, and they're like, I'll take anything, I'm open to anything, just show me a job that requires a PhD and I'll be happy to apply for it. So that's too broad. So think about 2 or 3 viable career options that make sense for you given these 3 spheres, and start to do your research. So start asking people that you find have inspiring careers and have interesting job titles. Don't hesitate to connect with them on LinkedIn and engage in a conversation. So that's the networking. You want to ask people, what are they doing exactly on a daily basis, and what does their career path look like? What kind of diploma did they have? What kind of work experience did they have to land that job or to develop that career? So once you start identifying different jobs that exist that are out there, you can even go to different competency frameworks that are available online. And one site I can recommend is called onet.com. So that's o-net.com, if I'm not mistaken. And it's a website that lists a lot of job titles and position, and with it lists all of the skills and competencies, the soft skills, the technical skills, the expertise that are required, and start looking at whether you have these skills and experiences and qualifications. And if you don't, that's okay. Well, for a career or a position to be a viable option, I think that it's good that you have, first and foremost, 70%, that you're covering 70% of the requirements or the skills. And then for the rest of it, the 30% or maybe up to 50%, make a plan of how you would get there. For instance, if you want a career, like for myself, one of the career paths I was considering as a viable option was a job as an educational developer. So that is someone that works with university professors to provide them with pedagogical tools and strategies to enhance their teaching capacity. However, to land that job, I would have needed years of teaching experience, because you cannot tell a teacher how to teach if you haven't been a teacher yourself. And so that was a little bit lacking on my resume. So had I wanted to pursue that career path, the first step that I would have taken is gain teaching experience. So fresh out of my PhD, I would have looked for a course lecturing position or teaching at a college. That would have been my plan. And you want to put a calendar to that plan. So I would have put a time limit, maybe 3 years, no more. You don't want to get stuck in a job that's just one step in your career plan. But you do want to have a plan and, you know, put deadlines on what skills you need to acquire, when, where you're going to acquire them, how long, and also have a talk with yourself about how long you're willing to give yourself to say that is a success, or that's a path that you're going to close because it's not working out. If you can't land that job that will give you that first experience within 6 months or whatever, or if you're trying to make your startup a success, maybe you want to give yourself like a 1 year period to try to make it happen. And if that doesn't happen, you're going to, you know, shut that path and move on to your plan B, something like that. So you want to educate yourself on what are the jobs that you are interested in, how do you get there, what skills do you need, how are you going to get them, put a calendar time on it, and, you know, have a plan B, plan C. Make sure that these 2 or 3 options are actually viable, interesting options that are adequate, they're right for you in your situation, in your market, and have fun.
So we had some good shares going on in the chat window as well. The website was shared by Michael. It was My IDP, and it's a great career resource for helping you kind of figure out what kind of stuff you are interested in doing, what kind of careers you want to go after, and especially it helps you basically telling you what your skills and wants and interests are. I believe the last time when I spoke to it was Aurelienne from Adoc, Dr. Bajani, she mentioned as well that there's your survey, your ongoing survey actually has those elements in it as well. So I think it's almost something that while you're completing it, it helps you think about these things. So it's something I would recommend to people based on that. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, so one thing that our survey can be useful for is that we do, within that survey, provide an extensive list of competencies that we built from previous research where we've identified all of the competencies that can possibly be developed during a PhD or during doctoral or postdoctoral training. So we have there an exhaustive list that may help you to think about what are the skills that you have or need. So in the survey, we ask you to identify within that very long list which are the skills that you believe reflect you as a researcher. What have you developed during your PhD or mastered during your PhD? But it can also be a tool to help you think about the variety of skills that you don't even know you have, that you have acquired and mastered during your doctoral and postdoctoral training. Yeah. But they're not linked to specific jobs. It's just a pool of competencies. We have previously surveyed almost 10,000 PhDs and have them talked about the skills that they felt they had developed, pulled them all together. It's a very exhaustive list, and that could be the starting point.
I shared the link again for the survey in the chat window if anybody's interested. Yeah, I recommend that doing that survey, and also the My IDP thing is a good resource. It is a great resource actually as well. Let me see here. I'm just going to check whether we have any other questions that have come in. We got nothing relevant. We have one that I will answer later.
Okay.
Relevant to the actual topic that we're dealing with. Any other questions, folks? Give you a minute to ask. If not, we're we'll call it a day, I think. If you have a question, I'll remind you to type it into the chat window.
Also, if the questions come to you later, don't hesitate to write me an email, and I'll be happy to answer to the best of my knowledge.
Yeah, fantastic. All right, I'm going to say thank you very much for your time today, Dr. Marianne Chevrier. Is that right? Is that better? I'm going to work on this with you offline. Chevrier, is that it?
Chevrier.
Chevrier, there we go. Okay, so for Friday's webinar, I'm gonna be on that. I'll know how to say your name properly. I'll get it out of my mouth properly, is what I'll say. I'm super. I'm very happy with how the webinar today went, and I would like to thank everybody for attending and for the great questions we had come in as well. And I hope that you all have a great day and happy Postdoc Appreciation Week. And Marianne, we'll see you again on Friday.
That's right. Thank you. Thank you, everyone, for joining. Thanks, Joe, for having me.
You're very welcome. Have a good day.
Have a good day, everyone. Goodbye.